The stars glittered like diamonds scattered across the endless black of space. Among them drifted a vessel so ordinary, so plain, that most who saw it dismissed it at once. It was the USS Valor's Light, a ship of the Terran fleet, small in size, old in design, and lacking the sleek beauty of modern warships. It was the kind of vessel that drew more laughter than respect. For years, other civilizations had laughed at it. Even humans had made it the butt of jokes. When it docked at Allied stations, alien captains would whisper to each other. "There it is," they would say, "the pride of Earth's scrapyard." Some called it a museum piece. Others called it a training toy. Nobody, not even Earth's closest allies, thought it was dangerous. Yet inside the Valor's Light, its crew treated it with love and loyalty. To them, the ship was not a relic but a home. They polished its walls, maintained its engines, and carried out their missions with steady hands and quiet pride. Every man and woman on board knew that while others mocked their ship, they had something no one else had, a bond stronger than steel. A crew of the forgotten Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, watching the stars shift slowly beyond the viewing screen. He was a man in his 40s, calm and thoughtful, with lines of experience etched around his eyes. Many wondered why such a skilled officer commanded such a weak ship. The truth was simple. He had requested it. Ward believed in the Valor's Light. He had served on it years before during its trial runs. While others laughed at the prototype, he had seen something unique hidden beneath the surface. It was not about weapons or shields. It was about heart. A ship, he believed, was more than its steel and circuits. It was its crew, its spirit, and its will to endure. Beside him, Lieutenant Maravay scanned the systems. She was young, sharp, and full of questions. "Captain," she said with a slight smile, "do you ever get tired of the jokes?" Ward chuckled. "Let them laugh, Lieutenant. A ship doesn't need to look mighty to be mighty." The crew behind them nodded in agreement. They had heard the jokes for years. Every time the Valor's Light passed through an alien port, the crew faced whispers, smirks, and mock salutes. But the crew had grown used to it. Instead of shame, they carried quiet pride. The mockery of the galaxy news traveled fast in the galaxy. Whenever Earth sent Valor's Light on missions, alien empires chuckled. One alien emperor had once described it as a candle trying to be a star. Another leader called it a pebble floating among mountains. Even human commanders treated it lightly. When serious conflicts arose, they sent their heavy cruisers and battleships. The Valor's Light was always given the smallest assignments: patrol a quiet sector, escort a harmless cargo ship, or carry supplies between outposts. It was never chosen for anything important, and yet, in its smallness, the ship found freedom. Because no one expected much from it, the crew had learned to move quietly, to observe without being noticed, and to act without drawing attention. In a galaxy where size and power drew the spotlight, the Valor's Light remained unseen, underestimated, and forgotten. The current mission at present, the ship drifted near the edges of neutral space, far from the crowded star lanes. Its mission was simple: patrol a region of quiet trade routes and watch for smugglers. It was, like so many of their missions, a task no other ship wanted. Ward stood in silence, gazing at the dark stretch ahead. "Report," he said. "All systems stable," Mara replied. "Engines at 80% capacity. Shields at minimum. No unusual signals detected." Another officer, Chief Engineer Hale, grunted from his console. He was an older man, gray-haired and stubborn, who had served on the ship since its first voyage. "She runs fine," he said. "Better than the fleets give her credit for." "She's not slow. She's steady," Ward smiled faintly. He had heard that line from Hale many times. But it was true. The Valor's Light had a strange endurance. It never broke down completely, never failed beyond repair. It was almost as if the ship itself refused to give up. Memories of mockery. That night, when most of the crew had gone to rest, Ward sat alone in his quarters. He remembered his early days as captain of a sleek cruiser, when other officers had envied his command. But when he had requested the Valor's Light, they had laughed. "Why trade a sword for a stick?" one admiral had asked. "Why tie yourself to a failure?" another had said. But Ward had simply smiled. "Because one day the galaxy will see what this ship can do." At the time, even he had not known why he said it. But deep inside, he had felt a quiet certainty. Ships had secrets, and he believed the Valor's Light had not yet revealed hers. The rumors of war across the galaxy, tensions were rising. The Krell Dominion, a vast alien coalition, had been growing restless. Rumors spread that they were preparing an invasion of human space. Fleets gathered on their borders, drills echoed across their outposts, and their diplomats grew silent. The Terran fleet prepared for the worst. They fortified borders, strengthened patrols, and deployed their strongest warships to defend key systems. The Valor's Light, however, was sent far from the action. Out of harm's way, they said. No need to risk her crew. Ward accepted the assignment calmly, though he knew what it really meant. No one trusted the ship to make a difference. To command Valor's Light was to live in the shadow of mockery, but the captain and crew carried out their orders faithfully, unaware that destiny was slowly turning toward them. The first sign during one quiet patrol, the ship's sensors picked up faint energy readings. At first, the crew thought it was nothing more than a passing freighter or a drifting satellite. But as they adjusted their scans, they noticed patterns, organized, deliberate, and far too strong for civilian craft. "Captain," Mara said, her eyes widening. This looks like military power signatures." Ward leaned closer. The readings were faint, almost hidden, as if someone wanted to avoid attention. "Keep tracking," he ordered. No transmissions. Silent mode. The crew obeyed, switching the ship into stealth operations. Lights dimmed, systems hushed, and the Valor's Light drifted like a shadow across the stars. What they found next would change everything. The unknown. Gathering beyond the trade routes, hidden in the dark of a nebula, the ship discovered movement. Dozens of vessels were gathered, concealed in the gas clouds. Their shapes were unmistakable, Krell warships. Not just a patrol or a scout force, but a fleet. A fleet so large that the sight of it made the crew fall silent. Mara's voice trembled. This could be an invasion force." Ward did not speak at once. His eyes locked on the screen, watching the gathering of ships. He had seen many fleets before, but never one so vast, never one so secret. This was no training drill. This was preparation for war. "We must report this to command," Hale said. "They won't believe us, but we must try." Ward nodded. "Prepare the message. But remember, no one takes us seriously. We may be ignored." Even so, they sent the transmission. They described the fleet, the location, and the danger. Then they waited for a reply. When it came, their fears were confirmed. Dismissed. The reply from command was short. "Your report is noted. Stand down and continue patrol. Larger ships will investigate if necessary." The word stung. The crew had risked discovery to gather this intelligence, yet their warning was treated as little more than background noise. Once again, the Valor's Light was ignored. Mara clenched her fists. "They think we're fools. They think we saw ghosts." Ward placed a hand on her shoulder. "It doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what we do next." The crew looked to him, waiting for his decision. Should they obey and withdraw, or should they continue to watch the fleet on their own? Ward's eyes narrowed as he studied the nebula. "We stay. If this is truly an invasion, we may be the only eyes watching when it begins." The crew nodded. Though fear lingered in their hearts, they trusted their captain. The Valor's Light. The ship no one feared remained in the shadows, unseen by the mighty Armada, and thus began the chain of events that would one day make the galaxy tremble at its name. The USS Valor's Light drifted like a lone shadow in the depths of the nebula. Its crew moved in silence, every man and woman tense with the weight of what they had discovered. Before them, hidden within swirling clouds of blue and violet gas, the Krell fleet gathered. The numbers were staggering. Warships of every size, from sleek destroyers to towering battleships moving in perfect coordination. The crew could hardly believe their eyes. Humanity had feared war with the Krell Dominion for years, but never had the enemy revealed so much strength in one place. This was no simple patrol or defensive maneuver. It was preparation for invasion. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of the bridge, his gaze fixed on the screen. He said nothing for a long while. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Finally, Lieutenant Maravay spoke. Her voice trembled slightly. "Captain, what now?" "Command ignored us once. If we send another report, they'll ignore us again." Ward's jaw tightened. He knew she was right. To Earth's high command, the Valor's Light was little more than an afterthought. Its warnings carried no weight. But here, in the heart of the nebula, the truth was undeniable. The Krell were preparing for war, and time was running short. The Choice Chief Engineer Hale broke the silence. His voice was rough, filled with years of service and countless battles. "We can't just turn back. If we leave, no one will keep eyes on that fleet. By the time the larger ships come to investigate, it might be too late." Ward nodded slowly. "We stay, silent, unseen. We will watch and we will learn. If command won't believe words, perhaps evidence will speak louder." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but none argued. They had chosen this life together, to serve on a ship mocked by others, a ship forgotten by the galaxy. If staying in the shadows meant defending humanity, then so be it. Shadows in the nebula days turned into weeks. The Valor's light clung to the edge of the nebula, its engines cooled to minimum power, its lights dimmed to avoid detection. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly, recording every movement of the Krell fleet. They watched massive supply ships arrive, unloading endless crates of weapons and fuel. They watched soldiers march across docking platforms, their armor gleaming beneath alien suns. They watched destroyers practice maneuvers, their weapons firing test blasts into the darkness. Each sight deepened the crew's fear. The Krell were not preparing for a small skirmish. They were gathering an armada unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Mara leaned forward at her console one evening, studying the patterns. "Captain, look at this. They're not just preparing for war. They're organizing in waves. This is an invasion plan. First strike, second strike, reinforcements. It's all here." Ward's eyes darkened. He had suspected as much, but hearing it aloud made the danger real. "Then we must find proof strong enough that command cannot ignore it." Doubt among the crew, despite their determination. Doubt crept into the hearts of the crew. Some whispered in the mess hall late at night. "What if command never listens?" one asked. "What if we're left alone to face this armada?" Another replied. "Maybe the captain believes too much in this ship. Maybe he sees strength where there is none." But though doubt filled their words, loyalty kept them steady. They trusted Ward. Even when the galaxy mocked their ship, their captain had never wavered. If he believed the Valor's light could make a difference, then they would believe it too. The strange systems while monitoring the Krell, Engineer Hale began noticing oddities within the ship itself. He spent long hours in the engine room, hands black with grease, eyes sharp as he studied the humming core. The Valor's light was supposed to be a failed prototype, outdated and weak. Yet time and again, Hale uncovered systems that seemed unusual. One night he called Ward down to the engine bay. "Captain, look at this." He pointed to a set of hidden conduits behind the primary power lines. "These aren't in the blueprints. I've served on this ship since its trial runs, and I never noticed them before. Whoever designed her built something far more advanced than what command admitted." Ward frowned. "What do you mean?" Hale tapped the console. "The energy distribution here. It's unlike anything I've seen. It's as if the ship has a second heart, one that's been sleeping all this time." Ward's eyes narrowed. He had long believed the ship carried secrets. Now Hale's discovery confirmed it. But what purpose did these hidden systems serve? And why had command never spoken of them? The enemy stirs, the Krell fleet continued its preparations. Then one day the nebula shook with movement. Dozens of warships ignited their engines, forming battle lines. Their weapons glowed faintly, charging with deadly energy. Mara gasped as she read the scans. "They're running combat drills. And look, those aren't just standard formations. They're practicing against human tactics." The crew froze. The Krell weren't simply preparing for any war, they were preparing for this war, a war against humanity. They had studied Earth's fleet, its strengths and its weaknesses. They were ready to strike. Ward clenched his fists. "Record everything. Every maneuver, every weapon test. If command won't hear words, they will see truth." Message in the dark. The Valor's light transmitted another report, this time loaded with detailed scans, recordings, and analysis. They waited in silence, hearts pounding. When the reply came, it was worse than before. "Your observations are noted. Maintain position. Reinforcements unnecessary. Do not engage." The crew's frustration boiled over. Mara slammed her fist on her console. "Noted, that's all. We hand them proof of an invasion and they still don't believe us." Hale shook his head grimly. "They think we're children crying about monsters in the dark." Ward's voice was steady, but beneath it burned quiet anger. "Let them think what they will. We know the truth, and we will not abandon our post." Growing bonds in the long days of waiting, the crew grew closer. They shared meals, stories, and laughter, finding strength in each other's company. They were more than officers and engineers. They were family, bound by loyalty not only to their captain but to their ship. Mara often walked the corridors at night, running her hands along the metal walls. She whispered softly as if speaking to the ship itself. "They may laugh at you, but we know better. You're not weak. You're waiting, just waiting for your moment." Sometimes she thought she felt the ship hum in response. The storm breaks one night as the crew kept silent watch. Alarms blared. The Krell fleet was moving, hundreds of ships turning as one, engines blazing like stars. "They're leaving the nebula," Mara cried. "They're setting course toward the Terran border." The bridge filled with tense voices. Hale barked out, "That's the first wave. They're launching the invasion." Ward's heart pounded. The storm they had feared was no longer approaching. It had begun. "Send the transmission," he ordered. "Every channel, every frequency. If they won't listen to reports, they will hear our warning in real time." The Valor's light transmitted a desperate message, broadcasting across space. "This is Captain Ward of the USS Valor's Light. The Krell fleet has mobilized. They are en route to Terran space. Prepare defenses immediately." Unheeded warnings, but even as their message traveled, the crew knew the truth. Command had ignored them before. It was likely they would ignore them again. Ward looked at his crew, his voice calm but firm. "We cannot stop that fleet, not alone. But we can shadow them. We can track their movements, warn our colonies, buy time for humanity to prepare. If no one else will carry this burden, then it falls to us." The crew nodded, fear mingled with determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and underestimated by friend and foe alike. But they were the Valor's Light, and they would not turn away. The gathering storm as the Krell Armada surged from the nebula. The Valor's Light followed at a distance, unseen in the shadows. Behind them lay a galaxy that still laughed at their ship. Ahead of them loomed an enemy that believed victory was certain. Between the two, a single vessel drifted silently, carrying a crew whose courage burned brighter than the stars. The storm was gathering, vast and unstoppable. The Valor's Light, the ship no one feared, sailed straight into its heart. The USS Valor's Light drifted like a silent witness at the edge of the void, following the massive Krell Armada from a distance. Hundreds of enemy warships pushed forward like a tide of steel and fire, their engines blazing, their weapons charged. For weeks, the small human ship had stayed hidden, tracking the fleet's every move. Its crew grew more restless each day, for they knew the storm was breaking. The Krell were on their way to Terran space, and humanity had no idea what awaited them. Captain Elias Ward stood firm, but inside, he carried a heavy weight. His crew had done all they could to warn command, but the warnings had been brushed aside. "Noted," they had said. "Reinforcements unnecessary," they had replied. Words that mocked the truth. Now, as the Krell moved ever closer to human borders, the Valor's Light was the only witness. A single ship, weak and forgotten, shadowing an armada that could tear whole planets apart. The decision on the bridge. Silence reigned. The stars stretched endlessly across the viewing screen, broken only by the faint glimmers of Krell engines far ahead. Lieutenant Maravey broke the silence. "Captain, if the fleet reaches the border, our colonies won't stand a chance. They'll be hit before defenses can even mobilize." Chief Engineer Hale grumbled from his station. "Command won't listen until it's too late. That's how it always is. By the time they see the truth, cities will be ash." Ward's jaw tightened. He knew both were right. For days, he had struggled with the same question. What can one ship do against an armada? At last he spoke. "If no one else will act, then it falls to us. We may not stop them, but we can slow them. We can buy humanity time." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. To face the Krell fleet was suicide. Yet in their captain's voice they heard no fear, only steady resolve. One by one they nodded. The first clash, the chance came sooner than expected. At the edge of a desolate star system, a Krell scout wing broke away from the main fleet. Sleek destroyers and heavy escorts moved ahead to clear the path. It was a small force compared to the full armada, but still powerful enough to crush a human cruiser. Ward gave the order. "Helm, bring us in behind the asteroids. Prepare to engage." Gasps filled the bridge. Mara whispered, "Captain, we're seriously fighting them?" Ward's eyes narrowed. "We've been running and watching long enough. If this fleet is to reach our people, let them first learn that humanity does not run forever." The Valor's Light surged from the shadows, its cannons firing. Bright lances of energy streaked across the dark, striking the Krell destroyers. One ship reeled under the impact, its shields flaring. But then the enemy turned. Weapons blazed, space lit with fire. The small human vessel shook violently, alarms screaming across its decks. "Shields failing," Mara cried. "We can't hold." Ward gritted his teeth. "All power to defense." The ship groaned as blasts tore into its hull. The crew braced for the end. And then, something changed. The awakening deep within the Valor's light, hidden systems stirred. Lights flickered in the engine bay. Ancient conduits that had lain dormant for years suddenly pulsed with energy. Hale stared at his monitors in shock. "What in the stars?" "Captain, there's power readings I've never seen before. It's like the ship is waking up." On the bridge, the screens flared as strange symbols appeared. Symbols no human system should display. The shield suddenly stabilized, glowing brighter, stronger. The enemy fire struck again and again, but the shields held firm. Mara's voice shook. "Captain, our shields are beyond maximum. This isn't possible." Ward's heart pounded. For years he had believed the ship carried secrets. Now those secrets revealed themselves. "Then let us see what the Valor's light can truly do." He gave the order. "All weapons, fire!" The ship's cannons shifted, their barrels glowing with strange energy. What had once been ordinary beams of light transformed into streams of focused brilliance, tearing through enemy shields like paper. One Krell destroyer exploded in fire, then another. The enemy panicked. They had mocked this small ship, but now it struck with impossible strength. Revelation in the engine room. In the engine bay, Hale ran from console to console, sweat on his brow. The systems hummed like a living heart, energy coursing through conduits that no Terran engineer had ever designed. "This isn't human tech," he whispered. "These circuits, this design, it's alien." The realization struck him like a thunderbolt. Years ago, when the Valor's light had been built, rumors had whispered of hidden experiments, of reverse-engineered parts recovered from a crashed ship. Command had denied it, calling it superstition. But now Hale knew the truth. The Valor's light had been built with alien technology, power humanity had never fully understood. And now, under the stress of battle, that power had awakened. The tide turns, the Krell scouts regrouped, firing in furious volleys. But the Valor's light moved like never before. Its engines flared, carrying it in impossible maneuvers. It darted between enemy ships, shields glowing, weapons striking with surgical precision. One by one, the Krell vessels fell. Explosions lit the void, debris drifting in silence. On the bridge, Mara could hardly breathe. We're winning against destroyers. With our ship." Ward kept his voice calm, though his chest burned with fierce pride. "Do not underestimate what we hold. This ship has chosen to fight, and we will not waste its gift." At last, the final Krell ship burst into flames, leaving the Valor's light alone among the wreckage. The aftermath silence fell across the bridge. The crew stared at their screens in disbelief. They had done the impossible. A ship mocked across the galaxy had just destroyed a Krell scout wing. Hale's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I don't know how to explain this. The systems, it's like they've been waiting for this moment. They're not unstable, not dangerous. They're alive." Ward's eyes softened. He looked around at his crew, seeing their awe, their hope. Then perhaps it was never us alone. Perhaps this ship was built for a purpose greater than any of us understood. The enemy reacts, but victory carried danger. The battle had not gone unnoticed. The main Krell fleet detected the destruction of its scouts. Signals flared across their comms. The Armada stirred like a beast angered by a thorn. "They'll come for us," Mara whispered. "They'll send everything," Ward nodded. "Yes, from this moment we are no longer invisible." "They know we exist." For years the Valor's light had been ignored, dismissed, mocked. Now it had revealed its teeth. And the enemy would not forget. A captain's resolve that night. Ward walked the quiet corridors of his ship. He touched the walls gently, feeling the faint hum of power flowing through them. He spoke softly, almost as if to the ship itself. "For years they laughed at you. For years they called you weak. But I knew. I always knew you had more to give." He paused, looking out at the stars beyond the window. "Now the galaxy will know too. You are not a joke. You are the hope of humanity." The message to command with proof in hand, Ward sent another transmission to command. This time he included battle recordings, the scans of enemy ships destroyed, The energy readings of the awakened systems, the images of Krell vessels torn apart. His voice was steady as he spoke into the recorder. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the USS Valor's Light. We have engaged the Krell fleet and destroyed a scout wing. Our ship has revealed systems unknown to us before, systems capable of defending against superior forces. The Krell Armada is real. The invasion has begun. We are humanity's first line of defense." He ended the transmission and sat back. Whether command believed him or not no longer mattered. The truth was alive in his crew and in the galaxy itself. The crew's new faith. The days that followed were filled with a new spirit aboard the ship. Where once they had felt the sting of mockery, now they carried pride. They had fought and they had won. They had seen their ship rise like a phoenix from the ashes of doubt. Mara trained harder, running simulations late into the night. "If we can face them once, we can face them again," she said firmly. Hale worked tirelessly in the engine bay, eager to unlock more secrets. "This ship is a treasure chest," he told anyone who would listen. "We've only just opened the lid," and the younger crew members whispered with excitement, their fear replaced with fierce loyalty. The Valor's Light was no longer a joke. It was a mystery, a legend in the making. The dawn of fear across the stars, rumors spread. Krell survivors carried whispers back to their commanders. A single human ship had destroyed an entire wing. Some said it was trickery. Others said it was luck. But one truth echoed through their ranks. The humans possessed a vessel unlike any other. The Krell began to fear, not humanity's armies, not its colonies, but one lone ship, the ship no one feared. Until now, the alien armada was moving like a great storm through the darkness of space. Hundreds of warships, each one bristling with weapons, drifted in perfect formation. Their shining hulls reflected the light of nearby stars, and their engines burned with power. The coalition of alien races had gathered everything they had to crush humanity, once and for all. Their commanders believed this was only a matter of formality. Humans were young, untested, and weak, compared to civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. And in their path stood only one ship, the Valor's Light. At first, no one in the alien fleet cared. Why should they? The little human vessel was the smallest thing they had seen. A craft that looked more like a scout ship than a battleship. Its thin armor and compact size invited ridicule. The commanders laughed in their command decks. They were certain this single ship would be nothing more than target practice. But inside Valor's Light, the crew was not laughing. Captain Elias stood at the center of the bridge. His voice was steady, though his hands were clenched tightly behind his back. The view outside was terrifying. Walls of alien battleships surrounding them, rows upon rows of enemy vessels, their weapons already beginning to charge. "We are outnumbered," Elias said calmly, his eyes moving from officer to officer. "But we are not outmatched." The crew knew what he meant. The ship's hidden systems had awakened, and for the first time the Valor's Light was no longer the weak vessel everyone thought it to be. Lieutenant Mara spoke from the weapons console. "Shields are holding steady. The energy core is stable, but if they all fire at once, we won't survive the first volley." Elias nodded. "Then we won't give them the chance." The first attack came like a wave. Bright beams of energy streaked across the dark, filling the void with blinding light. Explosions flared around Valor's Light as enemy fire cut through the vacuum. But when the dust cleared, the little ship was still standing. The alien commanders blinked in confusion. "Impossible," one of them muttered. "That ship should be gone." The human shields, powered by the strange alien core, had flared bright blue and absorbed the onslaught. The ship shuddered, but it held. Then the Valor's Light struck back. Mara's fingers danced across the console. The weapons that had once been weak and outdated suddenly unfolded into new shapes. Hidden panels opened on the ship's sides, revealing advanced cannons that pulsed with energy. A single beam shot out, cutting through the darkness, and struck an alien cruiser dead center. The ship exploded in silence, breaking apart like glass. The crew gasped. "Direct hit," Mara shouted, the bridge filled with a rush of hope. From that moment, the battle changed. The alien armada, so confident at first, now turned all their focus on the single human ship. Dozens of cruisers and destroyers surrounded Valor's Light, their weapons firing again and again. But the little ship moved like no other vessel in space. Its strange power core twisted gravity and space around it. Instead of flying in straight lines, It leapt sideways, curved through impossible arcs, and even seemed to vanish for seconds before reappearing behind its attackers. The crew worked together with perfect coordination. Every evasive move was followed by a counterstrike. Every strike destroyed or disabled another enemy. Alien ships began to fall one after another, and the commanders who once mocked the humans now shouted in anger and fear. "This is no ordinary craft," one of them roared. "Destroy it at once." On the bridge of Valor's Light, sweat dripped from every brow. Shields down to 60%. Mara reported, "Engine core heating," shouted Chief Engineer Darius. Elias remained calm. His crew looked to him for courage, and he gave it without hesitation. "Hold steady. Keep them guessing. If they think we are one ship, let them feel as if we are 100. The ship darted once more, vanishing into a sudden fold of space. When it reappeared, it was behind the enemy flagship itself. The alien commander aboard the flagship could not believe his sensors. How can they be here? They were on the other side of the field. But before he could act, the Valor's Light fired again. Its beam cut deep into the flagship's hull, tearing open decks and sending fire through the giant vessel. For the first time in the war, the alien armada hesitated. Fear had entered their ranks. The crew of Valor's Light was exhausted but determined. They were only one ship, but in that moment they fought as if they were the entire fleet of Earth. Elias looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of his officers. "This is not just about us. Every human colony, every family, every child back on Earth is depending on what we do here. We will not let them fall." A heavy silence filled the bridge, then Lieutenant Mara spoke softly but firmly. "Then we fight until the last spark, Captain." "Until the last spark," the crew echoed. The alien fleet regrouped. Dozens of ships turned their guns toward the Valor's Light. A storm of fire filled the void. The little ship twisted, dodged, and endured. Shields cracked, alarms screamed, panels sparked, but the crew refused to give in. Every time they were struck, they struck back harder. Another cruiser exploded. Another destroyer went dark. The battlefield was littered with burning wreckage, and still the human ship stood. The aliens, who had mocked it as a toy, now whispered in fear. Some believed it was cursed. Others thought it was not a human ship at all, but a phantom of war, a nightmare given form. Yet inside, the truth was simpler. It was courage, unity, and the will to survive. At the height of the battle, when the ship's shields were nearly gone, Elias made a bold choice. "Divert all power to the core," he ordered. "Captain, if we overload it," Darius began. "We don't have a choice. This is our last chance," the engineer obeyed. The ship's heart glowed brighter and brighter, until the entire vessel shone like a small star. Then, with a sudden burst of light, the Valor's Light vanished. Every alien ship fired at the empty space where it had been. Beams cut through the void, but they struck nothing. Seconds later, the human ship reappeared inside the center of the Armada. It unleashed everything. A storm of beams erupted from its sides, faster than the eye could follow. Enemy ships exploded one after another, the chain reaction tearing through the entire formation. It was as if the little ship had become a giant, its single voice roaring against hundreds. When the light faded, silence ruled the battlefield. Half the alien armada was gone. The rest drifted, broken and burning. The Valor's Light floated among the wreckage, scarred and battered, but alive. On the bridge, the crew stared at the screen in disbelief. Did we really do that?" Mara whispered. Elias finally allowed himself a small smile. "Yes, we did." Across the galaxy, news spread like fire. The ship no one feared had faced an entire armada and lived. What was once mocked now became legend, and for the first time the alien races realized a truth they had ignored. Humans were not weak. They were not harmless. They were dangerous when cornered, and they would fight with a fire that no empire could put out. The Armada had come to end humanity. Instead, it had been broken by a single ship, a single crew, and a single act of defiance. The battlefield was silent. Wreckage drifted across the endless black of space. Pieces of broken alien warships tumbled slowly, their once proud hulls shattered and glowing with fading fire. The mighty Armada that had sworn to erase humanity now floated as ruins, and in the center of it all was the Valor's Light. The small ship was scarred. Its hull was burned, its shields were almost gone, and its systems were battered. But it was still there. Against all odds, it had survived. The ship that no one had feared was now the ship everyone whispered about in awe. Inside the bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence. For a long time, no one spoke. The last explosion had died away, and the hum of the ship's engines was the only sound. Finally, Captain Elias rose from his chair. His voice was quiet but steady. "It's over," he said. "The Armada is broken." Lieutenant Mara leaned back in her seat, her face pale but proud. "We fought hundreds of ships, and we're still here." Engineer Darius laughed weakly, shaking his head. "I thought this ship was just a bundle of problems. Now I think it might be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." The crew chuckled softly, but there was no arrogance in their laughter. They were tired, humbled by what they had seen, and grateful to be alive. The return home. The journey back to human space was long and difficult. The Valor's light limped through the stars, its engines strained, its weapons drained. At every stop, the crew worked to repair what they could, patching holes and restarting systems. But news of their victory traveled faster than they did. By the time the ship entered Earth's communication range, the story had already spread. Human colonies cheered when they heard it. Families who had feared destruction now celebrated survival. On every planet and station, people repeated the tale. One ship stood against an armada, and won. At Earth Command, disbelief turned into shock. The officers who once dismissed Valor's light now waited nervously for its return. When the battered vessel finally appeared in orbit, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. The crew watched the view screen as blue oceans and green continents filled the screen. "Home. Open channel," Elias said. "This is Valor's light." Mara spoke proudly. "Mission complete. The enemy armada has been destroyed." For a moment, silence answered her. Then the communication channels erupted with cheers. Voices shouted congratulations, thanks, and disbelief. The once-forgotten ship was now the hope of all humanity. Recognition. When the crew stepped onto Earth's surface, they were met with applause. People lined the landing docks, waving and cheering. Children held small flags, and families shouted the names of the heroes. For Captain Elias and his officers, it felt unreal. They had left as a ship no one respected. Now they returned as legends. At a ceremony, the leaders of Earth honored the Valor's light. Medals were given, speeches were made, but Elias never forgot to remind everyone of the truth. "We were only one ship," he said to the gathered crowd. "One ship, one crew, and one desperate fight. We did not win because of strength alone. We won because we refused to give up. We won because humanity, no matter how small, never surrenders." His words echoed across the networks. Across the galaxy, humans listened and felt a new pride in themselves. The galaxy reacts, but it was not only humans who listened. In alien capitals, leaders sat in silence, watching the reports. The destruction of the Armada was undeniable. Hundreds of their ships had been lost to a single human vessel. Fear spread like a shadow. "What if humanity has more ships like this?" Alien advisors whispered. "What if every human fleet hides such power?" Some believed it was impossible. Some argued it was a trick. But no one could ignore the truth. The humans had done what no one else had dared. They had stood against overwhelming force and emerged victorious. For the first time, alien races began to fear humanity. Not because of numbers, not because of weapons, but because of spirit. Humans, they realized, would fight with everything they had, and that made them dangerous. The crews bond back aboard Valor's light. The crew sat together in the quiet of the mess hall. They had been offered leave, rest, and even promotions, but they chose to remain on their ship for the moment. It was more than just metal and circuits now. It was home. Mara raised her glass. "To the ship no one feared," she said. "To the ship that changed everything," Darius added with a grin. They laughed together, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced death and survived, and that made them more than comrades. They were family. Elias looked around at them with quiet pride. He knew history would remember their names, but for him, the greatest victory was this moment, seeing his crew alive and united. A new era. In the weeks that followed, humanity changed. Colonies that once felt weak now stood tall. Fleets that once lacked confidence now trained with determination. The legend of Valor's light inspired every pilot, every soldier, and every citizen. Recruitment soared. Young men and women signed up to join the defense forces, not out of fear, but out of pride. They wanted to be part of something greater. They wanted to carry the same fire that had burned in that little ship. But Elias knew the danger was not gone. The alien coalition had been defeated but not destroyed. Sooner or later they would gather again, and when they did, humanity had to be ready. Whispers among the stars. Meanwhile, far away in alien space, survivors of the Armada told their stories. Some described beams of impossible precision. Others swore the ship could vanish and reappear like a ghost. A few even claimed it was not a human ship at all, but an ancient weapon awakened by accident. These whispers spread fear. Alien commanders began to hesitate when discussing war with Earth. Merchants avoided human borders. And smaller races, once afraid of humans, now sought alliances. The galaxy had changed in a single battle. The mystery of the ship, despite the celebrations. One question remained. What exactly was Valor's light? Darius studied the strange power core day and night. It was far beyond human science. Some believed it had been built from alien technology recovered years ago. Others thought it was an experiment by human engineers who never revealed their secret. But no clear answer came. The ship remained a mystery, a blend of human determination and unknown design. Perhaps that was why it was so powerful. Elias kept the truth simple when asked. It is just a ship. What matters is the people inside it. And in a way, he was right. The legacy months later, the Valor's light was placed on permanent duty as humanity's symbol of strength. Wherever it traveled, people gathered to see it. Children painted its image on walls and songs were written about its battle. It became more than a warship. It became a legend. Other human ships were built stronger and faster, but none carried the same weight. For generations, the story would be told. The ship no one feared until it destroyed an armada. The captain's reflection. One night, Captain Elias stood alone on the observation deck. Stars glittered outside the window, endless and bright. He thought of the battle, of the lives lost, and of the future still uncertain. He knew more wars might come. He knew humanity was still small compared to the galaxy, but he also knew something greater. No one would ever underestimate humans again. As he stood there, he whispered softly to himself, "We are not weak. We are not broken. We are human, and that is enough." The stars gave no answer, but they did not need to. The universe itself had already heard the message. Epilogue. And so the legend began. The Valor's light, once mocked, became the most famous ship in human history. Its crew, once forgotten, became heroes. And humanity, once dismissed as fragile, became a force the galaxy could not ignore. The battle had ended, but the story had only begun. For wherever the Valor's light traveled, hope followed. And in every whisper among the stars, one truth remained clear.